Chef Ron. Ron has been in the food and beverage industry out at a small restaurant in Unionville, Ontario, when he began taking culinary skills at George Brown College. From there, he got his apprenticeship and earned his Red Seal as a certified chef. Ron has worked at private golf clubs, large hotels, and fine dining restaurants. He was the executive chef of a private golf club for 15 years, then moved on to teaching at the college level for culinary and hospitality students. He has traveled to over 30 countries around the world and explored his passion for food in each country with great reverence. Together with his wife, Corinne, Ron owned a Victorian century home, bed and breakfast, and restaurant in Port Hope, and currently teaches at Loyalist College in Belleville. And without further ado, here is Chef Ron.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thank you for letting me into your living rooms, and welcome to my kitchen. I thought what would be a great idea for this cooking demonstration was to do something for Christmas. It's coming up soon. We're halfway through November, and it is amazing how quickly time goes because we're really just a little over a month away from Christmas. So I thought we would do some Christmas inspired meals, or a meal or a dish. So let's go over the menu real quick. We're going to start off with a squash soup, a pepper squash soup with brie. And then we're going to have the cranberry and pumpkin seed stuffed turkey breast with a brandy pan jus. And we're going to finish it off with an eggnog creme brulee. Now, you're welcome to, as Sabrina, by the way, thank you for letting me take part in this, and thank you to the McCormick Care Foundation. And of course, thank you to Allison's Recreation and Leisure Services students. You guys have done an amazing job so far, and I really appreciate being asked to take part. So take notes if you like. Hopefully you have all found the recipes, but if not, I'm sure we can get them to you some way. But we're going to start off with making the creme brulees because it's helpful to have them made at least a day in advance, or even if you want to make them the morning of the day you're going to have the dinner, because they do need to cool and set in the fridge. So we'll start with that, and then we'll move into getting the turkey breast with that stuffed going, because we're going to need to put it in the oven so that it can bake for a little while. And then we'll finish off with making the soup. So let's start with making our creme brulee. We're just going to switch cameras here. Perfect. So there you go. Don't mind me while I move around. I'm just going to get the ingredients going here. The first thing we're going to have to start out with is our egg yolks, and we're going to put them into our little bowl here. And sugar. And because it's eggnog, we're going to add just a little bit of nutmeg, but not too much because it can be a little overpowering. And of course, rum. That's like really what makes eggnog eggnog. Just add a little bit in there. So we're going to mix these ingredients together. It makes sort of like a thick slurry. We want to make sure that the water that's in the egg yolks dissolves the sugar. Then in a pot, I have already prepared some cream, because you want to add it in when it's a little bit on the hot side. And I'm just going to pour this in gently. I don't want to add it in too quickly, because if I do that, the eggs will cook, and I'll end up with scrambled eggs. I don't want that. Now, I do want it to make sure that it mixes very well and that the sugar dissolves and the flavors all start to marry. But I don't want to whisk it so much that it creates a foam. If it gets too foamy, then what happens is that ends up on the top of each one of my little creme brulees. And then it doesn't create a nice surface after they've baked. So what I have here are 6 4-ounce ramekins. And the mixture that I've measured out should be able to fill all 6 of them. So I'm just going to add these in. By the way, I have already preheated my oven to 325 degrees. And I have my 6 ramekins in a roasting pan that's deep enough so that I can add hot water, because I'm going to be baking these in the oven in a hot water bath. I hope everyone can see that. There we go. So I have hot water here, and I'm just going to pour it in so that it goes up to about the level of my creme brulee mixture. And now it's ready for the oven. So I'm going to very carefully carry this over to my oven. Go back. And they should bake for approximately 25 minutes or until they set. So we can revisit that in a little bit just to see how they're doing. One thing we don't want to do is overbake them. We want the egg mixture to set so that they're nice and creamy. But what can happen if you leave them in the oven too long is that they will actually start to boil, and then you get these big bubbles in it. They puff up and set, and then they're not so nice. So we're going to move on to our next item on the agenda, and that is to make the stuffing for our stuffed turkey breast. And I'm going to demonstrate how to butterfly a turkey breast. So first things first, I'm going to peel my shallot and get the rest of my ingredients ready. And just with the knife, I want to cut it into a nice, as we say in the industry, brunoise, which is a very, very, very tiny cut. Very, very tiny little dice. Alrighty. And as well, I need to get my bacon ready. So I have a very, very thick piece of bacon here. It's been smoked and it's delicious. And I love bacon. It goes in everything. And we're going to cut it into lardons. And if you're wondering what a lardon is, that's a lardon. So it's a nice sort of a rectangular shape or a rectangular cut of bacon. And that's what we call a lardon. So I'm going to set that aside. And I'm going to set my onions aside, or my shallots. And I also have my cranberries and my pumpkin seeds ready. So I'm going to get to them in a second. First, we have to butterfly our turkey breast. So what I have here is a turkey breast that has all the bones removed, but the skin is still on. And you'll notice with this turkey breast, there's one piece that we call the tenderloin that sort of has a tendency to flap around a little bit. It's going to depend on how the butcher that you bought your turkey breast off of left it. Sometimes they leave it and it is literally just hanging off. If it's really in the way, you can just peel it off and put it in soup for later. The one that I have here is well, it was deboned by me, so of course it's perfect. It's still attached quite well. So I'm just going to rinse my knife. And what we want to do with the skin side down, I'm going to take my knife that's now parallel to the cutting board and just draw a line about halfway up And with my other hand, start to pull away the other side. And then just with the tip, I'm going to create a pocket, just like that. This is what we call in the industry a butterfly. It doesn't really look like a butterfly, but that's good. So I've created a nice open area for me to be able to put my stuffing in. So I'm going to set this aside now, and I'm going to grab, I have to grab a little frying pan in my burner, so I'm going to do that right now. I hope that's in shot there. There we go. All right, so I'm going to get my, my bacon lardon going. We want to cook them till they're just about crispy. We don't want them too crispy because they're still going to cook in the oven as they're stuffed inside the turkey. But we don't want it rubbery either. Nobody likes chewy bacon. Okay, so while that's sizzling, we need about 1 cup of bread. I just happen to have a nice dinner roll that I made a bunch of dinner rolls yesterday, and I have an extra one. So I'm just going to use it. What we want to do is, just like when you're making any kind of stuffing, just break it into tiny little pieces. The kind of stuffing that you would normally make that you're going to put inside a whole turkey carcass, it's fine if they're great big chunks, but what we're doing, we want them actually a lot smaller, a little bit more delicate. Just like that, nice little pieces. And we're going to go back, give our bacon a little stir. Starting to crisp up. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but one thing I know you can't do is smell it, and oh boy, does it ever smell good. The bacon's getting there. I'm going to add in my shallots. Alrighty. Starting to go very nicely. I'm going to add my cranberries now. So the moisture coming from the bacon will actually absorb into the dried cranberries a little bit, make them a bit softer. It's really starting to smell good in here now. Now for this stuffing, I'm going to be using fresh sage, but you can use anything you want, really. It just depends on your taste. You can use fresh rosemary, fresh thyme.
Hey, Chef Ron.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Absolutely.
Anne was wondering if you can use pancetta.
Absolutely. That's a great question, and pancetta would work wonderfully in this. You could use pancetta. You could even use prosciutto.
Perfect.
All right, so my bacon's well cooked and crispy. My pumpkin seeds are now in there. And I'm going to add this mixture in with my bread. Now you'll notice my frying pan has all the little bits that have stuck to it a little bit. We call that in the kitchen the fawn. And believe it or not, it has a tremendous amount of flavor. Okay, it came from the caramelization of the shallots themselves, from the bacon that left behind little bits of residue. And we never want to waste that. So what I'm going to do right now is just add a little brandy to it, and it'll soften up. And I'm also just going to put in a little bit of chicken stock, because later I want that to turn into my pan jus as a sauce. And I can just set that aside. And I've got my turkey stuffing mixture ready. So the next thing I'm going to do is stuff the turkey. So I'm going to move in with my cutting board here and place my turkey breast on here. You want to make sure whenever you're stuffing anything and you have an open piece of meat is to add a little seasoning to it. So a little salt and pepper never hurts. We're going to take our turkey mixture or stuffing, just like that. The turkey breast that I picked from the store was a little bit on the small side, so it won't accommodate all of the stuffing. So if you get a bigger one, it certainly would, it would take all of it. And then here's the tricky part. You want to kind of roll it nice and tight, and you'll end up with this lovely cigar-shaped stuffed turkey breast. Now, I don't want it to fall apart. So what I'm going to do is tie it. I have 4 pieces of string, and I'm just going to tie them in a double knot, not too tight, but tight enough so that they don't fall apart. Just like that. All righty. Now, back to, I'm going to throw that there, back to the frying pan. I'm going to turn it back on. I'm going to let the brandy reduce a little bit. Spoon. Where's my spoon? Found it. Hi, I'm back. So I'm just going to use my wooden spoon, and I'm going to scrape the fond off the bottom of my pan. And as you can see, it's going to make the liquid a little bit darker. That's a good thing, starting to look like a sauce. And it will come to a boil and let it reduce a little bit.
Hey, Ron.
Yes.
Dakota would like to know if you could use any alcohol aside from brandy.
You sure could. You can use anything to your taste. The only thing is I would recommend not using anything that's really strong in flavor. Like, for example, you know, you could use, say, Grand Marnier, for example. It would work great, but you'd have to be ready for a very orangey tasting turkey breast. But yes, you could use anything. You could use brandy, you could use port wine. Trying to think of some off the top of my head. And
Laura says tequila.
You could use, you could definitely use tequila. In fact, I want you to use tequila. Okay, so here's what's going to happen now is I'm going to season my turkey breast on the outside now. And with the seam side down, okay, this was the top with the skin, the seam side down, I'm going to place it in the pan, and I'm going to pop it in the oven. I'll be right back.
And Ron,
Yes.
how early can you prepare the stuffed turkey before cooking it?
I would say no longer than a day. If you're going to keep it in the fridge, there's something about raw poultry and bread together. Going any longer than a day in the refrigerator would make me a bit nervous. That's a great question, though. I'm just going to go and wash my hands on that topic of raw poultry. If I were doing a cooking show on TV, this would have been a great time to go for a commercial. So I have my creme brulees in the oven, and I have my turkey. Now it's stuffed and it's in the oven. It's time to make soup. Get myself cleaned off here, and I just need my burner back.
Ron, what about putting butter under the skin of the turkey breast?
Yes, and you know, it's funny, I did mention that in my recipe, to put butter in under the skin. And absolutely do that. Had I done that, I would have lifted the skin up and literally stuffed it with my hands, gotten it right underneath the skin. What that does is as it renders, it just kind of trickles down inside the meat and makes it even more tender and delicious. Okay, so we are going to start with the soup. So I've got my pot here, and could you please, thank you. Just want to make sure the camera angle's good. Good, you can see both. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. So I'm going to start this up again. Okay. Get that ready. Now for my squash soup, I need my ingredients handy. So what you need to do is cut your squash in half. Now the squash itself is going to be very, very hard. And if you're not comfortable using a giant knife to cut them in half, see if you can buy them already in half. You can. I've seen them at the grocery store. But if you're brave enough, you can just do this. Just punch your knife right through, and it'll pop open like that. And then what we want to do is take a spoon and just scrape out the seeds. It'll start to smell like Halloween. It'll remind you of cleaning pumpkins. And yes, you could save the seeds and clean them off and use them as a garnish if you like. They're great if you toast them in the oven with a little bit of salt and some oil. They taste delicious. Then what you'll do is take these two halves, or four if you cut two, and face down onto a roasting pan, just like this, and pop them in the oven. It can take up to an hour, but what you're looking for is, when you want to check them periodically, is just push your thumb on the outside of it, and if you find that it's quite soft, then it's ready. If it's still hard, it's not done yet. So I'm going to throw these in the oven. And through the magic of television, I already have some that I've done earlier, which works out great to our advantage.
Ron, can you use any type of squash, or does it have to be this squash?
You can use butternut squash, you can use spaghetti squash, you can use ghost pepper squash. Absolutely, you can use different kinds of squash. I just picked this one. I like how sweet it is, and I love the bright color. But yeah, you can use any kind of squash you like. This is actually quite quick. You can scrape the inside off with a spoon and get the flesh of the squash out. I have been asked before, why do you roast it? Two reasons. One is it's way easier to peel them when they're roasted, as you can see. I don't know if you've ever tried to use like a carrot peeler or something, or even a knife to try to peel a pepper squash. With these ribs, it's impossible, these ridges. The other reason I like to do it is, if you notice here, from being in the oven, it's a little bit it's browned a little bit. It gives it such a great roasted squash flavor. It's so perky. I love that. I'm going to scrape that out. And next, I'm going to peel another shallot. Now, the good thing with this shallot is no one's ever going to notice how we're cutting them because we're going to puree this soup anyways. So we can just chop it up into rough pieces. And herbs. I've got my nice little herb bouquet from my garden. If I remember my own recipe, there's a little bit of rosemary and a little bit of thyme. And I'm just going to kind of roughly chop those. So a little bit of oil or butter in the pot. Just checking if you can see that. You can. Lovely. And I'm going to sweat my shallots. Now, while this is happening, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take we're going to take a peek at the creme brulee and see how they're doing in the oven. So I can tell just by looking at them that they're going like this. They've got a real fluidity to them. We don't want that. What we want is a bit of a jelly action. So if you shake them and they kind of like jiggle like jelly, then that's the perfect time to take them out. If you shake them and they're doing this, then they're not ready yet. Okay, so I'm getting some nice color and my shallots are cooking. I'm going to throw in the herbs. And
Ron, is there a reason
Yeah.
Is there a reason to use the shallots in both dishes instead of onion?
You don't have to use shallots. You can use onions. That's a good question, though. I just like using shallots when I'm cooking. I like the flavor that it produces. But there are other onions you can use, absolutely.
Would you say that shallots are more bitter or stronger?
I don't find that they're bitter. They're not stronger either. They have sort of a mellow aromatic to them that I really, really enjoy. Okay, so sweating the shallots, the herbs are in there. I've got my squash. It's now kind of sauteing. It's perfect timing to add my stock. You don't have to use chicken stock. You can use vegetable stock, or if you want, you can use Lake Ontario stock or water. So that was about a liter. And I want this to come to a boil. And it will have to cook for a little while. I want the flavors to marry. I want everything to soften to the point where when I go to use the hand blender to puree it, it will be nice and smooth. So we're going to let that boil. In the meantime, I was thinking it would be a good opportunity for me to show you what some of this stuff looks like once it's cooked. So if you'll bear with me, I will be right back. Just grabbing my cutting board here. It's fun doing these Zoom meeting cooking demonstrations. I'm not going to lie, this is my first time doing a Zoom meeting cooking demonstration, and I think it's going all right myself. Okay, I have already prepared. How am I going to do this? I'm going to move my soup over here, pardon me. There we go. I have a turkey that I've cooked a little bit earlier in the day, so it's had time to rest. Whenever you cook any kind of a roast, it's always important that once you take it out of the oven, there is what we call carryover cooking. It needs to do the carryover cooking for at least 10 minutes and it will rest. If you start slicing whatever you roasted right away, what tends to happen is all that lovely juiciness will just run out all over your cutting board and you'll lose it. So it's important to let your roast rest for about 10 minutes. So I'm going to cut the little strings and peel those off. There we go. And I'm going to slice it to see what it looks like inside. Nice thick slices. And there we go. Look at that. How delicious does that look? I don't know how well you can see that.
It looks so good.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. You know what it needs, actually? It needs a little garnish.
Ooh.
It's funny, you know, in the industry, it's like the chefs will never let anything go without a little bit of herb on it. It's okay, now it's ready. I put a herb on it. Okay. The only thing that would be required at this point would be the pan jus, which I'm going to grab right now. Whee! Okay. So back to my pan jus. We're assuming that we've had the opportunity to cook the turkey breast, and all those lovely juices will render out and end up in your frying pan. And if you're using a lot of wine and brandy, that's okay because it will have had the time to evaporate, because alcohol, wine is lovely, brandy is lovely, but the alcohol itself is not very tasty. In fact, it's quite bitter. So you always want that to burn off, as we say. So I'm going to hit it with a little more brandy. And again, if you want, you can use white wine or port. You could even use a little bit extra chicken stock if you like. But chances are good that you will have enough liquid in your frying pan or in your skillet to be able to provide you enough for a sauce.
Ron, what is that you're cooking on? Like cooking the au jus on there?
The frying pan or this thing here?
This. Yes.
This is just a portable cassette burner, actually, that I use for camping. Just in the interest of doing this Zoom thing, it was better than me having to walk back and forth to the stove. So we set it up this way. All right, so here we go.
Also, Ron, yes, do that first. Sorry.
Yep, let me just drizzle that on there.
What an art this is.
The flavor that's in this. It's just unreal. It's so intense. You don't need a lot of it either. What was your question?
You're making me so hungry. My question was, can it be served, or yes, can it be served chilled?
I don't see why not. I don't know. Have you ever eaten cold stuffing before from the fridge? If you have and you don't mind that, then sure, knock yourself out. Me personally, I wouldn't eat it chilled. I would want it nice and reheated if it was like cold the next day. But yeah, I don't see why not. So our soup is still going to come to a boil. But before it does, I'm going to actually hit it with my power blender here. Now, I apologize in advance if this breaks your speakers because this thing is quite loud. Just a bit of a warning there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to submerge my submersion blender and puree the soup. So I'm going to do that. You won't hear me talking. There we go. Now again, in an ideal world, I would let this boil for a little bit longer because I want it to continue to thicken up. But lucky us, I made a soup earlier today.
Ron, how do you feel about someone adding meat to the portage?
Adding, sorry, could you repeat
Meat.
that?
Meat.
I think that's a great idea. If you wanted to add meat to it, sure. I would do that after I'd pureed it though. So you said
Yes.
meat, right? Not
so there
wheat?
are some chunks. Yes,
Right.
meat.
Just checking.
Yeah.
Yes, I would certainly add it, like I would dice up some cooked turkey, for example, or something like that, and then add it in afterwards. So here we have the soup that I made earlier. You can see it's nice and thick. I'm just going to serve a dish here. And my lovely assistant, Madeleine, is going to try it for us. And we're going to get some feedback, instant feedback, to see if it's any good. Because, I don't know, I want to make sure I haven't lost my touch. Now, I always like to garnish things. I'm going to use a little bit of creme fraiche. You can buy this at the store. Just a little blob of creme fraiche in there. I shouldn't say blob. What a terrible word. A nice dollop of creme fraiche. And a little bit of onion.
Ron.
Yes?
This is actually a personal question coming from myself. Oh my gosh, that looks amazing.
Go ahead.
What exactly is creme fraiche?
That's a good question. Creme fraiche is it's literally cream that's had an acid added to it so that it thickens over time. So it usually takes a couple of hours, even overnight. Add a tiny bit of lemon juice to heavy cream and put it in a piece of cheesecloth and let it drip overnight. And it literally becomes like a very, very, very thick, incredibly smooth, delicious condiment to go with any kind of cream soup.
All right.
Yeah. All right, Madeleine, it's all yours.
Do we get to hear Madeleine's decision on whether she
yeah, let's get her to taste it.
What she feels about it?
All right. She's trying it right now. What do you think? I'm getting the head nod. I'm getting the head nod.
Extremely delicious.
Why, thank you. All right, so now we're going to move on to the final product for our final product for the creme brulee, and I have a couple of those that I've made already. So This is the fun part. Not everybody has one of these at home, but these are little butane canisters, and this is the torch part that goes on top. And basically what you can do with this is very handy for a lot of different things in food, particularly if you're going to make a creme brulee. So I basically just turn on the gas and I get this awesome flame. So what I'm going to do is, if you can see here, I've got my creme brulee. Awesome. My creme brulee, and I'm going to take a good teaspoon of sugar and sprinkle it on top. Just kind of sift it back and forth like this to spread it nice and evenly. Turn on my torch. And just nice and evenly start to melt the sugar. The word brulee means burn. So it's actually cream with burnt sugar. That's exactly what it means. A little bit of smoke there. When it starts to bubble and smoke, just kind of pull back with the heat. We want it to be really, really specific. We want it just before it burns. So a dark, dark brown, but not like pitch black. Madeleine, are you ready for dessert?
I'm extremely yes.
All right, let's flip the camera back. And come on over here. So I'm just going to show you. This is Madeleine. Thank you for your help, by the way.
My pleasure.
She was doing she had the honor of flipping the camera back and forth. Please, by all means, let us see. I want to hear what you have to say. I don't know if you can hear the little crack with the spoon on the top of the sugar, but it is quite crunchy.
She obviously couldn't wait to crack it though.
I made enough for everybody. So that concludes. Now, before I go, I have to tell you, given the circumstances, my mind was a little scattered. Can you please pop back? Thank you. I neglected to put the brie cheese in my soup and a little bit of brown sugar, as it says in the recipe. So I do apologize for that. But prior to me pureeing the soup, I would have taken I believe it's 70 grams of brie. I would have literally just broken it up with my fingers and dropped it in the soup, added the brown sugar, and then started to puree it. I have to mention, it is important that the brie stay in the soup while it's on a good simmer for a little while. And the reason for that is because cheese has different types of bacteria on it. If you put it in at the very end and then just let the soup chill, that bacteria has the opportunity to do some wild and crazy things that you might not necessarily want to serve to people. So in order to kill off any of that, we want it to simmer with the soup so that all of that is moot. So I guess we could flip back and so last thing I want to talk about before I turn it back to you, Sabrina, is each of these dishes need to be accompanied by a lovely wine. So I'll start with the first course, the squash soup. Squash is already very sweet. So we kind of want to think of something that may contrast that a little bit. And Chardonnay has a tendency to be a nice, a crisp, dry wine. So you might want to have a look at getting something along the lines of a dry Chardonnay, something with almost a bit of a peach flavor to it. Ontario has some fabulous wines, and the Niagara region, actually, that might, is coming to mind. I can't think of anything. Enniskillen might be a good one. Now for the turkey is such a wonderful meat on its own. I never like to add anything to turkey that could take away from the flavor. It's pretty delicate. It's not a big meat like lamb or venison or something like that. Turkey's a delicate little flower. So we want to pick a wine that's maybe something has a little bit of sweetness to it. And oftentimes I find wines like a Vidal or a Gewürztraminer have a tendency to be a bit on the sweeter side. Might go very well with your stuffed turkey breast. And finally, of course, with the creme brulee, we're already talking about eggnog, and we've got things like nutmeg, so there's some spice there. A late harvest Riesling is what comes to mind for that one. But again, you want to kind of lean on the sweet side, more of the desserty kind of wines. Not necessarily an ice wine, but something late harvest would probably work very well with your creme brulee. Folks, that is really all that I have to say or do at the moment. I'm happy to take questions, but you would not believe the mess that I have made in this kitchen right now. And my lovely wife, Corrine, who's been a big help and a lot of support, is already looking at me like, who's going to clean this mess up, young man? And I know that it's going to be me. I'm happy to take questions, Sabrina, if anyone's curious about anything.
Yes. Okay. Ron, thank you. I feel like I can smell and taste everything that you cooked tonight. Everything looked amazing, and I'm definitely going to try.
Come on over to my place and help us eat all of this.
Sure. Yep. So thank you for donating your time and your resources and your skills to our fundraiser. We really appreciate it. You've helped us raise so much money for the McCormick Care Foundation, and you're amazing.
It's a pleasure and an honor, and I thank you.
Yes, thanks. Okay. Attendees, you can unmute yourselves so we can give a loud round of applause for Chef Ron for everything that he's done tonight.
Yay!
Heck yes. I do have a little bit more to say though. Yes, our event tonight has come to an end. But we are so grateful for everything that all of you have donated, your time and your money to Fit for Care 2020. Oh dear. Please keep in mind that this event has been recorded and it will be published for the next 2 weeks. And you are more than welcome to share this event and the link with with those like people you love and your friends and everyone that you know, so that we can continue to raise money for McCormick Care Foundation. I guess that is all. Ask your questions and chat amongst yourselves and have a good time for the next 15 minutes while our event continues.
I have a question for Ron. Yeah, the
Please ask it,
turkey
Yasmin.
can get darker.
I beg your pardon?
The turkey can be darker than they look like.
The meat itself or on the outside?
The meat itself.
The meat itself, I use the turkey breast. It tends to be quite white. That's a good question because you could use the thigh and do the exact same thing and the meat would be much darker and juicier too.
Thank you.
Chef Ron, there was a question in the chat about what kind of vegetables you might use to accompany the turkey breast, and I'm wondering if you can speak to that. What would you recommend in terms of a vegetable?
You know what? It's funny with there's so many classic vegetables that people serve with their turkey at Christmas time. There's always that aunt that makes the broccoli and cauliflower with the bechamel on it, right? There's always somebody that makes great pureed turnips, and I like to stay away from all of that, but only when I'm cooking in a restaurant, because I want to give my customers something, you know, new and exciting, right? But when I'm feeding my family, I will admit I go to the standard traditions, and I would serve cauliflower and broccoli with it. I would serve carrots with it. These things are tasty. Glazed carrots, a little bit of honey and some chopped parsley. Everybody loves that kind of thing.
There was also a question from Laura in the chat, and she wanted to know, as a kitchen newbie, are there any tools or particular things that you would recommend for someone new to cooking that they should definitely have, like kitchen essentials that you certainly could not live without in your kitchen?
There are so many. That's like asking a mechanic, what tools should I buy? But as a newbie, you might want to invest in some really good knives. There's some wonderful places that you can buy. If you go online actually and go to restaurant supply stores, you can buy equipment for industrial kitchens that chefs buy. So for example, I prefer Victorinox knives. This is the company that does Swiss Army knives. They have a rosewood handled knife set that I love, and I have had since I was an apprentice when I was 20 years old, and they make fantastic. So invest in some good knives. You know, there are so many things that you can buy in the kitchen. I mean, like a hand blender is always handy to have. Get one of these torch thingies, okay? I mean, not only are they awesome for making creme brulee, but they can fend off invaders if they happen to come to your house.
And Ron, what do you mean by a torch thingy? Can you specify on that?
This torch thingy, I don't know. And, you know, just make sure you have lots of wine handy when you're cooking. Thank you, Allison. Yes, Allison knows it. She gets it. And you're also muted.
Can you tell us what the best way to reheat the turkey is?
I'm sorry, the best
way to reheat the turkey.
Oh, to reheat, the best way to reheat
the turkey is.
Yes, that's a wonderful question. Two things to keep in mind. Okay, first one would be if it's already sliced, what you want to do is take a little bit of chicken stock, put it into a pan and cover it with tin foil and slowly heat it in a low oven, like 300 degrees. That way the turkey stays, the stock will start to steam and it will soak back into the turkey and keep it nice and moist. If you're going to do it whole, let's say you cooked off the whole breast and and you want to reheat it again, do the same thing, but you're going to want to do it at a really low temperature. Like I'm talking 250, 275 for a good hour and a half in order to make sure that it's heated thoroughly and it doesn't dry out. I hope that answers that question. If you were waiting for me to say microwave, I wasn't going to say microwave. No microwaves.
I have a question. When you always set the meat to rest to let the juice absorb and all of that, how do you make sure that it keeps warm before you get everything else on the table? Like how quickly will meat lose its temperature, like after the resting period?
That's a great question. Usually when I'm letting it rest, I let it rest on or near the stove so that that area is already very warm. Like I don't put it as far away from things as possible so that it cools down quickly. But to answer your question, I would say probably no longer than a half an hour. I'd say half an hour and it's starting to get cold. Did that help?
Yes, thank you.
sounds like someone's from Star Wars right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Shannon, your
Bandwidth?
internet is, yep. It's not working so well. Maybe you should type your question in the chat.
Yeah. If you have a question,
That's
you
my
can put
sister.
it in the oh. If you have a question, you can put it in the chat and Sabrina will relay it to Chef Ron.
Yes. Shannon, just type it, please. If anyone else has any questions, then feel free to ask them. Okay. Allison seems frozen right now too.
I have a question.
Yes.
Chef, why do we need to put sugar on our creme brulee?
That's that's a great question. I never have even had to think of that. That's the big ticket item for creme brulee is the sugar and that it hardens after you melt it and it gets, you kind of crack it with your spoon. That's the whole appeal of creme brulee. I have to pull it out of the oven actually, so I'm going to do that now.
Oh yes. Please crack one in front of us.
Want me to do another one?
Oh no.
Ron,
Yes.
can you send those food to us, the student and the teachers for Fanshawe, with Madeline and Rob, please?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that? I heard Madeline and Rob.
Can you send the some kind of food with them to us?
Oh, yes, they will be leaving with food because there's no way I'm going to be left unsupervised with 12 creme brulees in my house.
Okay, Alison, I'm gonna waiting for mine.
Okay.
Me too. Ron, when you're doing that, when you move
When I shook it?
Yeah. Is that hot for you or
No, no.
what's happening?
I know it looks like, oh my God, that must be so hot, but it's not. It's not.
Mhm.
It's only like 700 or 800 degrees.
Can you crack it for us
Absolutely.
if you have time?
That one probably
Or-
needs like about a minute.
Oh,
But here's the one I made earlier. You can, I don't know if you can hear this. I'll crack it near the mic.
Oh, it's gonna be such a good sound.
Can you hear that?
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna have some.
What a great sound.
Just the combination. Let's flip it back. Thank you. I'm just going to show you guys me eating it and make you all jealous.
Oh, I don't think we flipped
There we
back.
go.
Or am I
Okay.
just, oh, yep.
So the
That's just me.
creaminess of the actual brulee itself and then the crunch of the sugar. Can you hear me crunching it? Delicious.
Ron, have you ever burnt one of the creme brulees?
Oh yes, I've burnt many things, including fingers, arms, and once my ankle.
Okay, that sounds like a good story. How did you manage that?
Yeah.
Oh man, there are some stories I could tell you.
Ron, Laura was wondering what your favorite Food Network show is, if you have one.
Oh, you know what I will actually watch? I'm not a big fan of like the competition-y kind of ones because I just, they're so fake to me. But one that I really, really like is You Gotta Eat Here. I think that's probably one of the greatest cooking shows on any television network. I love that, what's his name, John Panucci? He goes around and he goes to these little restaurants in small towns all across Canada from coast to coast, and he promotes them, and you end up learning a little bit about food, and I always get inspiration for some really cool ideas. That's my favorite show.
All right. Anyone else have questions or comments for our lovely Chef Ron? All right. There's arguments about good food shows in the comments. All right, so we're gonna wrap it up now. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Ron, for helping us.
My pleasure.
Being the star of our fundraising event. You have done amazing, and your food looked. I'm gonna go cook a full feast now at 9 o'clock at night, thanks to you. So yes, all right, thank you, everybody. Have a great night, and go cook some food. Go make these recipes. Cook them for the holidays.
Woo!
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Chef Ron. Thank you.
Well done. Well done. I
Thank you.
enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Me too, very much.